The state is a step closer to having a higher minimum wage, and Governor Pritzker is still working on a budget plan. We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state issues, sometimes federal issues, and how they just might affect your life. I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State Journal-Register. Legislature's in session. New governor's trying to get stuff done. We'll see how it goes. With me to talk about it today, Hannah Meisel is back, State House reporter for the Daily Line. Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
And Charlie Wheeler is back. He is director of the Public Affairs Reporting Program, University of Illinois, Springfield. Longtime Chicago Sun-Times State House reporter before that. Welcome back, Charlie.
Thank you, Bertie.
And Hannah, you're in the Senate chamber today. I know this because in the press box I was sitting next to you. But the Senate has passed a bill to raise the minimum wage from the current $8.25 over, I believe it's 6 years, to $15 an hour. Didn't mean to give any business folks a heart attack. How are things looking for that? The governor called together a bunch of legislators about an hour later in his office to basically say this is a great thing. Everybody there, as far as I know, was a Democrat, but it still has to pass the House, which is expected possibly next week. So how's it looking?
I mean, it's looking pretty good for the Pritzker folks. I was speaking to someone right after that press conference, and a lead House negotiator, and he said it was very solid. They said they had more than enough votes.
Really? Okay.
You know, I think people are, feathers are ruffled a little bit. People are wondering why it's going so fast. Of course, the standard line from Majority Leader Lightford, who is the sponsor of this bill and has been the sponsor of minimum wage bills since she entered the Senate in 1999, she says, it's not a rush. We've been working on it for years and years. I do think, though, that people are a little bit miffed that the business community has been, included in negotiations and then really pushed off at the last minute. But all in all, it's looking good for the Pritzker folks. I know they wanted to get this done before the budget address February 20th. So, next week the Senate's not going to be here. The House was, and it's expected that they're going to pass it. And from what I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like Speaker Madigan is going to blow this up like he has done many times in the past with big bills that come over to his chamber.
Or in other words, changing it and sending it back to the Senate so that they have to vote again on something as controversial as this. Charlie, is Governor Pritzker moving too fast on what is, it's a contentious issue in the Senate debate. I don't believe there was a single Republican that voted for this. They were talking about the problems of not only business people who might have, they claim that they might have to lay off some folks because of the hit in higher salaries. They know, and Senator Lightford, the sponsor, did say that the state budget would be adjusted for this, but state facilities or public facilities, schools, universities, nursing homes that might get state reimbursement, there's going to be something in the state budget, I think for at least most of those entities, where they're going to try to cover the difference in cost. Again, that adds to the questions of how you fill Illinois' budget hole. But Republicans were basically saying, you are doing this too much too fast. Some of the business folks wanted something regional, downstate. You don't need as much money to live in certain areas of the state as you do in Chicago. Whereas Governor Pritzker, Senator Lightford basically said, you deserve the same wage wherever you work. Charlie, are they acting too quickly to seem bipartisan on this?
Well, listening to the arguments that were made in the Senate against raising the minimum wage, it struck me as kind of deja vu all over again, because the last time we raised the minimum wage, which I believe was in 2010, when Rod Blagojevich was governor, we heard the same arguments being made. And there's always the concern that if I, as a business owner, have to pay my workers more, that means maybe I can't hire as many workers, maybe I can't have them for as many hours, maybe I have to cut into what I can pocket as my profit. But on the other hand, I haven't seen it reported nearly as much the fact that the folks who are working at minimum wage and will get an increase aren't the kind of people who are going to take the money and put it in some offshore account in the Cayman Islands. They're going to get that extra buck or whatever, and they're going to spend it at the grocery store for gasoline, clothes for the kids. You know, it's not as though it's going to disappear from the economy. And I've not seen a study that, or at least I've not seen it reported, that puts into context the fact that this will also have an economic stimulus on that segment, like the lower earning wage earners who are going to now have a larger paycheck.
Yeah, well, it was
And it's interesting, you mentioned the speed. I've watched this stuff, as you guys know, for a lot of years, and this is about as fast as I've seen a bill at the very beginning of a legislative session move. As a matter of fact, John O'Connor of the Associated Press had a tweet showing the legislature's site, the website, ilga.gov, where they have a bill status listing, and the count actually had the bill introduced in the House before it had passed the Senate. Now it's since been adjusted, and it's a bunch of lines going down, not to bore people, but it was there that the bill was introduced and it was sent to the Rules Committee before the vote was there. And then later on they adjusted it to put the vote 39-18 above it going to committee. But it's already been through the Rules Committee, it's already been sent to the Labor and Commerce Committee, and so as Hannah said, there'll be a hearing on it. It'll be this time next week we'll be talking probably about Pritzker having signed the bill.
You think it would be that fast?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. By the way, could it have been Pat Quinn if it was 2010? Because when the last thing passed? Because I think
2010.
2010, it would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Duh.
So that's, Rod may have wanted it, but things moved on.
He's
No,
a little busy in
they
2010.
They did one with Blagojevich.
We've
and
probably
this was
had
the
some
final. Yeah, this was the
increments. Right?
final.
Yeah, and of
increment.
course, the people who are opposed to this would say that going up to $15, even though it takes until 2025, still is a significant jump, because right now, what is it? The Illinois one is
$8.25.
$8.25, and the federal one is
$7.25.
$7.25. So we're only $1 different, but we're going to be significantly increasing. It was interesting. Dale Ryder, a senator from Mattoon, a Republican, was talking about if you go to $15, some people, like a single mother with a certain number of children, might lose their food stamp benefits. And Kimberly Lightford, the Senate sponsor of this on the Democratic side, said before she went on the microphone, and then made, that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then she basically, it got a little bit partisan there because she was chiding the Republicans. I can't believe I'm hearing Republicans after all these years lamenting the fact that people are going to come off government benefits if we do this. So, you had that kind of back and forth. And again, I think Governor Pritzker, who came in with a strong win and has strong majorities in the legislature, has talked a lot of bipartisanship, does say the business community was involved. I mean, there is in this, and so, and he's saying Republican ideas are in this.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see if Republicans agree with that. But this does have a teen and youth minimum wage. So if you are under 18 and work less than, I think, 650 hours a year, it's a lower, it'll only go up to $13 instead of $15. And, the first increase will be instead of to $9.25 to $8 from the current the current teen wage is $7.75.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see where this goes.
Well, and you could say that there is compromise, because as I recall, the previous iterations did not include a credit that allows small businesses to, in essence, hold back some of the withholding taxes of their employees,
Right.
that they can keep themselves to help mitigate the impact on their bottom line of having to pay their workers more.
Right, there will be a tax credit, and I think it fades out over time. But
Over
I think
8 years.
I think in 2020, it's like 25% of the cost of your business is something you'll get. You won't have
Yeah,
to
and
pay
I don't believe that was
amount
in
of taxes.
previous versions. And at one point they were talking about doing this like in 4 years, and the business community said, no, we want 8, so it's going to be in 6. So in a sense, this isn't just something being rammed through. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't one of the business groups in favor of it?
The Illinois Restaurant
Right.
Association,
Yeah.
yes, but that's because they have a different kind of thing with the
Tips.
they want to make sure that their tips are protected, so they
Yeah.
were always going to be
Right. In other words,
not as a
have-
heavy lift.
they don't have to pay the full minimum wage, but I think tips have to make
Yeah.
up a percentage, can make up a percentage of it. I think it's half.
Yeah, so basically,
And that would still be allowed, and they didn't want to lose that opportunity. And they said reality is reality, and Democrats are running
and
things
they might
right now.
actually have to pay more if the tips don't come up to the percentage at the minimum wage.
Right. So if, as Hannah mentioned, it seems clear Governor Pritzker wants this by the time he announces his budget plans in his combined State of the State and Budget address on February 20th. What happens, Charlie, if he doesn't get it? Is momentum smashed in the early Pritzker administration?
If he doesn't get the minimum wage?
Yeah, but by then.
I suppose. I don't.
Yeah.
But to me,
But
that's
you think
like
it's
saying,
gonna happen?
What happens if the sun doesn't come up tomorrow?
You really think it's that
Yeah,
clear?
I think it's a slam dunk.
Okay.
Bless you.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much question about that at all.
and even if they had to go back to the drawing board, say, you know, the speaker did blow it up, yes, that would affect relations between the speaker and the governor, and of course, that's been tenuous for, you know, in many administrations before, so you wouldn't necessarily want that. But like, even if you did have to go back to the drawing board, I feel like Democrats feel as if, and Pritzker especially himself feels as if he has such a strong progressive mandate. You know, he'd probably just go on to the next thing, and the next thing is going to be laying the groundwork for a progressive income tax.
Right. I did.
Well, and I would note, though, that the House sponsor, Will Gazzardi, who's a Democrat from
Chicago.
north side of Chicago, said that he thinks the bill is fine the way it is. He doesn't think it needs any changes.
Right.
And Madigan was reported as being in favor of it, too. So I don't think it's going to be a
Right.
situation as in the past on contentious
And
issues.
Will
where
Gazzardi,
the
who's
House
very
will go their
progressive,
own way.
and Mike Madigan, they don't always get along on everything.
No, right.
So,
Yeah, but on a deal like this.
no, that's what I'm saying. that-
And there's no point in it. What's in it for Madigan to try and stop this when it's very popular with his membership? When he was one of the prime movers behind the advisory referendum a few years ago, asking if we should increase the minimum wage, and people, like 70% of the voters said yes. So
Very interesting. There's another minimum wage kind of bill. It has to do with what teachers should be paid, because I think current state law has a bottom, a lowest amount.
$10,000.
Yeah, like it's around $10,000 that teachers must be paid. And State Senator Andy Manar of Macoupin County, who was the driving force behind changing the school aid formula last year, also passed a bill last year to raise in increments the minimum amount teachers can get paid in public schools to $40,000. I think he passed it. It was vetoed by Governor
Yes.
Rauner at the
Yep.
time. He has reintroduced it. How's it looking this year? What do we think? Same kind of a elevator up?
I think it is a more difficult bill to pass than the minimum wage, in that it, depending on the details, what he's laid out is a program that goes to this for 30-some years. Manar says 38 years, it's been $10,000, which is ridiculous. And he wants to raise it for the 2021 school year to $32,000, then the $34,000, then the $37,000, and for the 23-24 school year to $40,000. A lot of school districts, particularly up north, already pay their teachers more than that.
Sure.
The impact will be on rural districts, smaller districts, downstate Illinois, and some of the school superintendents are very concerned that if we have to pay teachers more and bring them up to this level, that's going to eat away at the new funding that we're getting under this revised school aid formula. And we may actually wind up worse off than before.
And it's also, I mean, anytime you try to pick something up that has to do with schools, school funding, then you get into the thorny issue of property taxes. Illinois already has, you know, one of the highest property tax rates in the, you know, combined in the nation. And that's the reason it took so many years to do a school funding formula overhaul, because no one really wanted to touch that.
Right.
And when you pay your property tax bill, when you sit down and do it, it's a very you feel that viscerally. You write out that check and you're like,
Right. And usually your local school district gets the most, partly because our state only pays, like a quarter
Yes.
of the amount to support local K through
Yeah,
12
depending on how
education.
if you include the pension payment, it's less than a quarter. If you don't include the pension payment, it's about a third.
There's just an issue that's out there about school districts, and I know we still have about, I think it's 850-ish school districts in the state. I know, Charlie, you and I remember the days it was more than 1,000. I'm reading a book actually by Michael Bacalus, who was a former state superintendent of public instruction under the old Constitution and later state comptroller, and he's talking about all the little school districts, and
I think after World War II there were like 10,000 of them.
God, really?
Is that right?
Yeah.
wow.
But Governor Rauner, 4 years ago when he came in, was talking about, I want to cut the number of units of government in Illinois in half. I remember John Maitland, state senator from Bloomington, years ago said, we really want school consolidation. These little districts should work together and save money. And I remember how hard it has been, because nobody wants to lose their local football team,
Yeah, it's an
the
emotional
identity of their
thing.
high school. Some of these districts have one school, some have a couple. Are we going to see any move at all under the Pritzker administration for that? This is purely speculation, because I don't think it's been a
I haven't heard
giant issue.
anything from him. I mean, maybe I've heard something from him on the campaign trail about, he also agrees that the units of local government, because, I mean, you've got a bunch of Democrats who are also on board with this idea that, yes, 7,000 is probably too much.
The units of government overall
Yes,
in the
but
state.
I don't think that it's not one of his top priorities at all.
Well,
It won't be. It will continue to occur as people in these areas see the declining population. They see the fact that their school is so small, particularly at a high school level, it can't offer the kind of advanced classes that kids need to be able to go on into a career, particularly in science or technology, engineering. And the advantages of consolidation will appeal to them. What people tried in the past, leaders, and failed, and I can remember Jim Thompson at one time tried to put through a mandatory consolidation requiring small school districts to get together, particularly small high school districts. And he got lambasted and he backed off it. And they've said the hardest thing to kill is a high school mascot.
there you go.
I'm sure you
Indeed.
guys have
Yeah.
heard that.
The wild
But
kids.
I think the demographics and the economics will continue to cause consolidation, but it will be generated from the grassroots and not from top down.
Okay. Well, budget issues are going to dominate, and all of the wonderful feelings that might be generated by the new Democratic administration and Democratic legislature pushing things through. There is a reality day on February 20th when we hear the budget address from Governor Pritzker. What are we looking for, Charlie? I know, interestingly, the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago, which represents, I think, bigger businesses, just came out with its own budget plan to raise taxes now at the flat rate from like 5.95 on individuals to 5.95 from 4.95. Corporate rate would go up a point as well. They want a combination of $8 billion in money raised, and I think it's $6 billion raised and $2 billion cut. This is not the kind of thing Pritzker is talking about. He wants a graduated income tax, but that would take a constitutional amendment because we have to have a flat tax under our 1970 Constitution. It's going to be pretty painful, or is it, when Pritzker announces his budget plan? Because we still aren't probably bringing in as much money as we're spending.
Yeah, and I think he has pressures that are going to be built in the budget. We talked about education. There's an expectation that there be another $300 million or so provided for this new school formula, with 99 cents out of every dollar going to the schools that are least able to finance their own education, what's needed for their particular mix of kids, the demographics of their district. He's going to have to worry with the minimum wage. We're going to have to pay more to caregivers, particularly after the impasse of a couple years ago. A lot of the healthcare nonprofit organizations that actually provide the on-the-ground work are really struggling. With the minimum wage increase, they're going to need additional funding from the state. So that's got to be taken into account. The pension payment is probably going to go up in the neighborhood somewhere between $600 and $700 million additionally into the 5 retirement systems. So he's got all of that stuff to try and accommodate. So I think it'd be fair to say the budget will not be balanced in the sense that we're going to eliminate the bill backlog, which is in the neighborhood of what, $7 billion, and the comptroller predicts it's going to go up by another billion or $2 billion at the end of the current fiscal year. He's not going to be able to eliminate that. In fact, if he can balance the spending between the new money coming in, I mean, I'd be satisfied. I think that would be amazing. Now, I don't know what new revenues he might try and, if he's going to think about marijuana or gambling.
I was going to talk about that because one of the things, I don't know if it's stalling or not, but the idea of recreational use of marijuana, Governor Pritzker clearly campaigned on that. He said it was more than raising money. It's also a justice issue because more people with darker skin tend to get arrested for possession, and it's just worked out that way statistically with law enforcement. On the other hand, Senator Durbin was in Springfield about a week ago and said basically we should go slow. We don't have enough study of the effects of marijuana in some of these other states and the effect on driving, which is just interesting. He's not in charge of the state. He actually said, I don't think they come to me for advice, but he is a big leader of the party. And then the Catholic bishops all across the state came out against recreational marijuana, which would certainly have some effect on some legislators. So that one seemed like it might be the first big thing. Now, clearly, the minimum wage increase is the first big thing, but we don't, there's recreational marijuana. I don't know exactly where that sits during this session.
I think at the end of the session, we will have authorized recreational use of marijuana. But in terms of the revenue, think about it. The plan is put in place. How long is it going to take to get the rules and regulations written? How long is it going to be before the actual head shops, if you want to call them that, get set up? You're not going to get an immediate revenue impact. You'd be lucky to get half of what the annual revenues are expected in the first fiscal year. Think how long it took us after the legislature approved medical marijuana, how long it took to get that program.
Yeah, but I'm also wondering, if, given that we have that, I wonder if that will make it easier to move on to recreational, because you don't have to set up the entire infrastructure.
Start counting on the money right from the get-go.
Yeah, not the money, but perhaps some of the systems.
That's a good point. But I mean, in everything, rules making process always takes longer than anyone ever expects. It's just the way it is, and I mean, we can't start counting on that money right now, but the Pritzker administration, I mean, I don't know how in their, proposed budget they wouldn't count on that money, because, I mean, what else are they going to have to go on? He said today during the press conference over, celebrating the minimum wage passing the Senate, that he plans to pass a truly balanced budget, or plans to propose a truly balanced budget, and he acknowledged the cost to the state that is going to be, the state will have to bear because of the
minimum wage
increase.
Right.
And, I was talking to someone last week, and they said, he wants to have a happy thing right now because the budget is truly going to be sobering. Because there are, I mean, you think about the Rauner years, Governor Rauner came in and he wanted to do so many things, but then he created this big wound that we had to recover from, and not a lot of
well, I'm sure
budget
he would have blamed it on Mike
actually,
Madigan just for the record. But we had a 2-year budget
right,
pass,
and so
no other
that was just
that.
Lighting a bonfire over here and ignoring this other fire, basically. So we had to put that out, and now we return to kind of our new normal, and we have to open our eyes back up to yes, we still do have, what is it, $140 billion in unpaid pensions. We still do have this, bill backlog, and we still do have
future liabilities.
Yes.
Everybody, all the pensioners are getting their checks.
Here's a thought to consider, though. If you look at the last fiscal year, fiscal 2018, which ended last June 30th, and you look at the money that was taken in that year and the money that was spent pursuant to authorizations for that year, we actually wound up with a surplus.
Well, things might be moving up a little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't,
Yeah.
we were in the negative when you included the fact that we had all this bill backlog.
Right, it's still
but
back. Yeah, they're still.
the negativity decreased.
Gotcha.
So you could argue that we did have a balanced budget in the sense we didn't spend more in that year with those appropriations than the resources.
Yeah. One other thing that was vetoed by Governor Rauner that might well come back is tobacco 21, that you won't be able to buy cigarettes until you're 21. I think the age is now 18. There was a big press conference during this last week with the advocates saying, you know, this is it. This is another one where I'm going to be like Charlie. I think we're going to see that. Hannah, agree? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's certainly the political will there. You know, I think Pritzker has said that he is on board with it. I'm like 90% sure. You know, the folks did a press conference this week. They're back in force. You know, they have all of these, you know, examples of, for example, vaping. That the vaping trend has kind of wiped out all the gains that public health people have made. You know, trying to get young people to stop smoking. Certainly, not really many of my friends of millennial generation smoke, but apparently these kids who are Generation Z, who are, you know, 5 or 6 years younger than me, a lot of them do this vaping thing.
Right, which is not smoke, but it's nicotine.
Yeah,
You're inhaling nicotine. Yeah.
But like, I guess, yeah. The other thing is, I think 5 or 6 states with a pretty recent addition, either Hawaii, I think Hawaii it was, are on this tobacco 21 train, and pretty much half of the state, when you count Cook County and then all these other home rule municipalities who have passed their own tobacco 21 ordinances in the last few years.
So we can catch up.
Already.
Okay.
I think
That
this-
we're gonna
the
have.
sponsor, Senator Morrison from Deerfield, said that 34 Illinois communities now have.
Well, there you go. On that note, another good fact from Charlie. Charlie Wheeler, Hannah Meisel, thanks very much. I'm Bernie Schoenburg. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.